show. My 50 years experience of fixing cars to answer all your car questions. You might hear some noise in the background because they're working on these $2 million townhomes behind the property behind my house, and they're now cutting hole in the particle board so it vibrates. Sounds like people beating on drums. You'll probably hear that. Now remember, during the show, just go to live chat, type in your questions, and I will pick the best ones and answer them. The first question is Enfield, and he says, Scotty, what do you think about the Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4 or GTO or SL? Okay, those Mitsubishi 3000 GTs are fun cars to drive. There's no arguing that. They got a fancy quad cam V6 engine. They got a lot of power, especially if you get a standard transmission. But realize they are Mitsubishis. As they age, they get very expensive to repair, and those are interference engines. A lot of times the engines wear out. If you buy a second-hand one, never, ever buy a second-hand one without having a guy like me, a professional mechanic, check it out before you buy. With our equipment, we can check just about everything, see if there's a problem with the vehicle, road test it. Don't buy one of those things without a mechanic checking it out. Now, if you're going to buy a brand new one and you don't mind the price, go right ahead. Just realize they have rather low resale value, so if you don't keep it a long time, you'll lose a lot of money if you do buy one and then sell it quickly in a few years. Next question. John Doe says, how can I remove urine smell from my seats? Yeah, that's a really hard smell to get rid of. There are actually neutralizers. And depending on whose urine it is, I guess. I had a cat once, neighbor's cat. I left the window down. The cat jumped in and peed on my seat. Man, did it stink. So I just went to one of these pet stores, and they had this mixture that gets rid of pet cat urine especially. And I used that, followed directions, and it worked quite well. Now, you can try things like Resolve to try to get it out, clean it, but that smell kind of sticks in, and the stuff that removes it is usually a biological one where it actually makes enzymes that eats it up to get rid of the smell. So go, if it's cat pee, go to a pet store. Now, if it's people pee, I guess the same stuff would work there. Next question. Damien Rentmeester says, Scotty, my grandpa drives a 2014 Nissan Rogue Sport Xtronic with 25,000 miles. The dealer recommends only to check the transmission fluid at 60,000 miles. What would you recommend with an Xtronic? Okay, I'd change it every 60,000 miles. It's synthetic fluid, so it's very good fluid, but I would change it every 60,000 miles because Nissans have very, very weak automatic transmissions, and you really want to take care of them because they're going to break on their own anyway. So if you keep really clean fluid in them, they can last as long as possible. I personally would never buy one of those in the first place, but your grandpa has it, so you might as well take care of it and try to make it last as long as possible. Next question. Ron Burgundy 209 says, I'm getting a clunking sound which sounds like coming from the front. My 2005 Toyota 4Runner various times. Happens when I accelerate, turn the car, or pull in the driveway. Okay, I got a video that covers that. It's called How to Find the Source of Noises in your front end. Fix your own front end. Just type that, fix your own car's front end Scotty on Google, and it'll show you the video. What you want to do is you want to jack it up, then you pull on the wheel at 3 and 6 o'clock, and then at 12 and 6 o'clock, and 9 and 3 o'clock, and see where the wobble's coming from. If you can't find any wobble, I've got another video called Finding the Sources of Noise in Your Car. Watch that, and you can get this little device for $100-something bucks. Stick the sending units in different areas, and then you listen to it with headphones. You go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the different senders on your receiving unit with the headphones, and when you click the one that's closest, it'll make the most noise, and you can pinpoint what the sound is. It can be ball joints, tie rods, all kinds of things can do that. You want to pinpoint it down. Next question. John Volante says, Scotty, what's your opinion on the 99 Jeep Cherokee? I just bought one a few months ago. Okay, well, the 99s are definitely better than the new ones. Since Fiat took over Chrysler, the quality's gone. So I definitely wouldn't buy a new one. But you got an older one. You want to take care of it. Now, if you have one of those Cherokees that has the V8 engine, those last the longest. But if you got a 6-cylinder one, realize that the automatic transmissions on those are kind of weak, and you'd want to baby the transmission change the filter and fluid and really take care of it, because they do have weak automatic transmissions. And pray that you don't have computer electronic problems, which all Chryslers are known for when they get older. And that thing's pushing 20 years old, so it may start to have a lot of electronic problems. I see that a lot when I work on them. Next question. Eldar Novalik says, Scotty, got an 04 Cadillac CTS. Has trouble starting after every trip to the gas station. It cranks, but it's hard to start. What should I do? Okay, if it only does it when you go to the gas station and fill it up, odds are you have a bad evap canister vent valve. The anti-pollution system, evap, when you fill your car with gas, there's all those fumes. It has to accept those fumes and then filter them out. If your evap canister vent valve is bad, it will back those fumes up into the manifold. And then when you try to start it, it floods the engine out with too many fumes. So have a pro check your evap canister vent valve, or if you're a gambling man, just go buy one and replace it. I see them go bad all the time in those things. Next question. Raul Garcia says, I got an 04 Escalade. The temperature gauge goes up and down. Well, they'll go up and down, but they're supposed to go from cold to medium and stay there. If yours keeps going up and down, odds are you got one or two problems. One, you could just have a bad thermostat. They don't cost much. Go to a place like AutoZone, buy a new thermostat, put it in. It's a simple job. Doesn't take all that long. If it's not that, a lot of times it's the sending unit for your temperature gauge. If it's not working right, or if the connection is loose, it'll keep going up and down. And first, check to make sure that the connection's not loose, because if it's loose, it'll do that. But if it is nice and tight, then get another sending unit. They don't cost that much, and a lot of times they'll do that too. Next question. Squid Garage says, Scotty, I have an 03 F-150 5.4 V8 with 220,000 miles. Is it a good truck? Well, you got 220,000 miles on it. That's not bad, you know. Yeah, those V8s, I'm not a fan of the V6s, but those V8s are pretty solid made engines. Now, they're somewhat gas hogs because it's a big truck. All big trucks are gas hogs. Even the Toyota big trucks, like the Tundras, they are gas hogs too, because a big vehicle has to push itself around. Trucks are high up in the air. They're not very aerodynamic, so they're all going to get pretty crappy gas mileage. That's just how big trucks are. But that F-150 got 220,000 miles on it. The only really weak point is the automatic transmission. And really, if it went out, you get a remanufactured unit with a 3-year warranty from Ford. You can just do that if it does go out. Next question. The Sam says, I have an 05 Saab 9.3 and there's a really loud ringing noise for the first few seconds of accelerating. Sound completely goes away when the engine warms up. What could be causing that? Okay. Saabs realized, of course, the company's bankrupt. They went out of business years ago. They made fun cars to drive, but they are absolute monstrosities to repair. The engines were in backwards, so on some of them, to change the oil pump or the water pump, you had to pull the engine and transmission out of the car. Just ridiculous design. If you hear a ringing noise, you got to figure out what it is. So when it first does it, rev it up in the driveway. If you're lucky, maybe it's one of the bearings starting to go, like an alternator bearing or a fan belt idler bearing. Pray it's just a bearing that's starting to wear out, because if it only does it when it's warming up, a cold bearing will often do that, and then when it heats up, it stops making the noise. So check everything the fan belts drive first to see if any of those bearings are warm. Next question. Cap Vaudis 28 says, what would cost a 2003 VW Bug to shift hard and late? A worn-out transmission. Those things have one of the worst automatic transmissions ever made to man. A few years ago, I had a customer, and they had one. I told them it's out, and I don't rebuild them. And they were foolish enough to actually have it rebuilt, and it cost them like $4,500. It wasn't even worth $4,500, the whole vehicle. Why would you spend that kind of money rebuilding it? Now, take a gamble. Find a guy like me who has a Volkswagen dealer-level scan tool. Have him hook it up, take it for road tests, and then analyze the transmission data. And pray that it's something like a bad solenoid or something like that, or a wiring, or even a computer flaw. Sometimes it can be that. But from my experience with those things, it usually means they need an overhaul, and it's more money than the car's worth. That's why if you are going to buy a Volkswagen, buy a standard transmission. Their standard transmissions are pretty reliable, but their automatics, they're just pure garbage. Next question. Christian Moody says, Scotty, got a question. I have an '07 V6 Ford Mustang. I wanted to know if it's normal to see a small amount of oil getting into the PCV hose even after replacing the valve. Thanks. Yeah, what? It's a 12-year-old V6 engine. They're all going to use a little bit of oil as they age. And a little bit too much pressure inside the engine crank. That relieves the crank, stands for positive crankcase ventilation. A little bit of oil will go through there. If it doesn't use much oil, don't even worry about it. It just means that your rings are a little bit worn and it's throwing a little bit of oil through the system. Next question. La Cinnamon 31 says, Scotty, I got a 99 Buick Regal. I hear a really loud ticking noise when I turn the wheel to the right. It's a constant thing and I have no idea what it is. Okay, if it only ticks when you turn the wheel to the right, it's probably your CV joint going out. The CV joints are drive axles, and on the ends there are CV joints so that you can turn and drive at the same time. What happens is if the boot rips, grease gets out, and then it starts to wear. Nobody fixes them anymore because you can get a complete aftermarket brand new CV axle with both joints for like $59. So you just put a new one on, it wears it up. And to see if it's that simple, just jack it up in the air, and if you see on the inside of that wheel, the boot's ripped and grease is leaked out, it's the CV joint that's making a noise. Just put an aftermarket axle assembly on it. I do it all the time on those. David Ramos says, Scotty, I got a 99 Dodge Caravan with a 3.0 engine. When it rains, the serpentine belt comes off. Yeah, you know, that happens all the time in those things. You got one of two things. Either your automatic tensioner is bad, which is typical. It doesn't make them tight, and when they get wet, they slip off. The belt could just be old and worn. Change the belt, of course. But if you change the belt, that still does it. Either the automatic tensioner is shot, or when you put the belt on, look at it with a straight edge to see how the belt drives. And odds are, one of the things that's run is cockeyed, like the alternator. Maybe the bushings that hold it on are worn, so it sits at an angle now, and it's not even with the others. I often see it on those as they age. Very common. Next question. Gilberto Andraca says, Scotty, I'm thinking about buying a new car. Any suggestions? Yeah, check your brain. I never bought a new car my whole life. I always bought used cars. You save so much money buying a used car. But, I mean, it depends on what you want. If you want a really good standard transportation car, get a Toyota Corolla. They can run forever. If you want a fancier one, get a Camry. If you want a sports car, get a Ford Mustang. I mean, there's all kinds of cars to get. But if you want something that's going to last forever and rides nice, get a Toyota Camry. Those things can last forever, 400,000 or 500,000 miles, and they do ride, especially the new ones. They ride like a dream. I drive new ones because I rent them when I fly somewhere. Well, I don't. The companies that are paying to fly me around places rent me cars, and I try to get a Camry because they get phenomenal gas mileage, almost 40 miles a gallon, and they're real comfortable cars. But I'd never buy a new one because I'm too cheap. Next question. Nathan Liu says, how long will my brand new 2018 Audi A4 last if I take care of it? Well, if you really take care of it, it might last for quite some time. They become endless money pits as they age. If you just look in the past of those cars, see how low their resale values are. They are because they fall apart. I had a neighbor who had a turbocharged version of that, and he was a corporate lawyer. And he ended up getting rid of it because he hated the thing. The transmission blew up twice on him, and it wasn't even automatic transmission. It was the standard. And it just kept blowing up because they were so poorly made. Now, if you take care of it, change the oil. Don't listen to any of their garbage. Change the oil every 5,000 to 6,000 miles. Don't change it every 10 or 15. That's nonsense. And change the coolant once every 5 years. Take care of it, and you never know how long it's going to last. But realize, look at the resale value. They have very poor resale value, and that means that they really aren't very good cars. Next question. Mitch Pellard says, Scotty, my 2012 Ford Focus XE, I was driving down the road. My car just stopped. Felt like it went to neutral. Gas and just rubbed it and drive. Help. Well, sadly, it sounds like your transmission's shot, and those had bad transmissions. There's actually a class action suit against Ford for that, so you might look into that. You want to pray that maybe if a CV joint broke, if it broke, then the engine will just rev up and it won't go anywhere. Pray it's a broken CV joint. But I know with those, they've had a lot of problems. And if you look and the CV joints are all bolted on and the transmission has fluid in it, then odds are your transmission just went out. They've had a lot of problems with that particular one. And like I say, if it is a transmission, you might look into this class action suit that's being done against those transmissions because they had a lot of problems with those things. Next question. Gregory Wagon says, should I get a rebuilt transmission for my car or go to a junkyard and get a used one? Very good question. Depends on your vehicle. Now, you take like Toyotas. Their transmissions are pretty bulletproof. So when one gets wrecked and it gets put in a junkyard, there might be a really good transmission used there that you can buy. On the other hand, let's say you're driving a Chrysler van. Well, those have one of the worst transmissions ever made. And you're not going to go to a junkyard and buy a used transmission for one of them because odds are it's either shot or it's going to break in a few thousand miles because they're notorious for breaking down. So it really depends a lot on what car you have and how much money you want to spend. Realize the top you ever want to spend is call up a dealer. Don't have them do it, but see what a remanufactured factory transmission costs. Never pay more than that for the transmission or what the warranty is. And then go from there. See how much somebody else costs to put it in because the aftermarket guys charge a lot less than the dealers. I've seen dealers charge $1,200 to do a job that an aftermarket guy will do for $400. Next question. Sam Hackakian says, Scotty, I got a 15 Fusion Titanium with 58,000 miles. Thinking about trading in for a new model, payments or more, but I'm worried once I hit 60,000 it'll fall apart. Should I just keep mine? Okay, here's the thing. If you're leasing that Fusion, go ahead. When it's off lease, get rid of it. But if you bought it, don't trade it in. Because if you trade in something that new, you're not going to get squat for trading value. You're going to lose so much money, you'll wish you hadn't traded in. Just keep driving the thing. Because when you got a 4-year-old vehicle and you trade it in, you look at the low money they're going to give you. I mean, if you find somebody who's going to give you what you want for it, go right ahead. But you're going to find you're going to lose so many thousands of dollars. Even if you were, say, took a long-term loan, you might even owe more money on the car than the car's worth on the trade-in. So I wouldn't trade it in then. Next question. Mr. Batman says, Scotty, I was planning on trading in my 07 Chrysler 300 for a 2017 Chrysler 300 200. You think I should change to a different company? The new Chrysler's worth the price. No, the new Chryslers are garbage, and the 07 was before Fiat owned the company. Now Fiat owns it. You do not want one of those new ones. Their quality is much lower. If you have lower mileage on that 07 300, keep driving the thing. They were better made then than they are today. I would definitely not buy a newer one. If you want a newer car and you want to get rid of that, get yourself a Toyota, a Lexus, anything but a Chrysler. You do not want to buy a modern Chrysler. Since Fiat bought them out, their quality has gone even worse. Next question. Don Corleone says, yeah, I thought he died in the movie. Scotty, I just got my license. I'm looking to buy an older classic car. I'm looking at an 84 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. Any thoughts? Okay. Those can be fun cars to drive. Of course, it's probably going to have a V8 engine. It's going to use a lot of gas. Be a gas hog. If you don't mind that, it's an old car. That's what? 25 years old, quarter of a century. Before you plunk any money out for one of those, pay a mechanic like me to check that thing out. We know what we've been doing, and since it's a old one, you're not going to get much data with a scan tool. You need a mechanic who understands those cars. Spend an hour or so driving to check it out, telling you what the car's worth. See if it's even worth buying in the first place. And then if it is, mechanic would honestly say, you're going to have to fix some of these things, brakes, whatever, and give you an idea what kind of money you'd have to put into it. Just don't look at it and buy it right off, because you can get into a money pit on those things. You always want a mechanic to check that stuff out. Next question. Mundu Taku says, Scotty, what do you think of a 2007 Volvo S40 with 70,000 miles? Just bought one. Well, they're great driving cars, and it's only got 70,000 miles. But I hope you didn't pay much for it, because they really have low resale value. As they age and break down, those are European luxury cars. And as such, You need years of experience, lots of special equipment, all kinds of stuff to work on them. And the parts generally cost a fortune. But with 70,000 miles, it still might last quite some time. Now, all of my customers have had those when they get to be, 12, 15, 20 years old and they get 100 something thousand miles on them. They're generally completely falling apart and they all ended up hating them and never bought another one. But if you paid a little for it and you like it, you never know, it might last a while. Next question. Kong Mike Lewin says, what do you think about a 2013 Toyota Yaris? I'm considering buying a used one with 50,000 miles. Well, if you don't mind the way they ride and how they look, go right ahead. It is an econobox car. It's the lower end Toyota. They can last a long time. They do ride kind of bumpy. They're smaller cars. They get really good gas mileage. If you get in it and you drive it around and you like the way it rides, and as anything else, you find a guy like me to at least hook up a scan tool and check the data to make sure there's no serious problems with it. They can be good cars if you like the way it looks and the way that it rides. A lot of people think they kind of ride bumpy and they don't like them. But if you don't mind the way they ride, go right ahead. They can last a really long time. Next question. Imagine says, Scotty, how do you like the new BMW Jetta 2012 diesel? I'm not a Volkswagen fan, but they make very good diesel engines. That said, the Germans cheated with their emission stuff and they got in a whole bunch of trouble because they used computer software to make them get more power and run better and get better gas mileage, but pollute more. But then when they were being tested on a dyno for the emissions test, they'd go to a different software and they'd fool the computer. Well, they got caught. They were cheating. A couple guys went to jail. And shame on them. Now, those diesels can last a really long time. But if you do buy a Volkswagen, you have to get a standard transmission car. Their automatic transmissions are horrible. When they fall apart, they cost a fortune to fix. But if you do get a Jetta diesel with a standard transmission, they can last a long time. I've had customers get 200,000-300,000 miles pretty much trouble-free of those things if they take care of them. Next question. Gunsmith Jack says, what do you think about Suzuki Vitara or Samurai? Year between 90 and 99. Are they good machines? Okay. Here's the weird thing. I used to have a Suzuki racing motorcycle. It was bulletproof. It go 175 miles an hour. I mean, it just ran and ran and ran. But their cars and little trucky things like that, they're kind of crappy made. They ride like old washing machines jailing around. They're not the greatest vehicles in the world. They pulled out of the United States. You can't even get parts for them anymore. But all over the world, some people like them. When I was in the Virgin Islands, that's what they rented, the small little Jeepy ones. And they're fun to drive around in, especially in a place like the Virgin Islands. If the island's 20 miles long and 2 miles wide, you're not driving that far. But I had a customer years ago bought one in Houston. He moved to Florida. He drove to Florida and he called me up. He says, man, I'm getting rid of that thing. It rides like crap on the highway. Just driving it from Houston to Jacksonville, Florida. He said, I'll never get another one of those things. So it's your choice. It's your money. And don't pay much for one, though. They're not really worth anything, especially since they pulled out of the United States, if you're in the United States. Next question is Flaviano Castro. Scotty, I got a 2010 Ford Explorer V6, and my check engine light came on, so I replaced bank 1 sensor 1 oxygen sensor, and after replacing it came back on. I used my OB tool and it says it's my fuel injector. Well, if you got a bad fuel injector, it would have to be on the bank 1 side of the engine now. It's not bank 2, but bank 1. But you'd have to figure out which one it was. And odds are your tool isn't going to be sophisticated enough. I have tools from $800 to $8,000. And when I hook them up, they show which cylinders misfiring, how the milliseconds are firing on the fuel injectors, and I get really good data on what the problem is. You might want to just pay a guy like me to analyze it. Maybe not fix it, but at least analyze it rather than guessing, because the odds are your scan tool isn't good enough to get dye depth enough that you won't be just guessing again on trying to fix it. Next question. Well, they're flying all over the place. Here we go. Flaviak said, I just fixed my 2009 Mazda 3 for safety, using it for a new car around $8,000. Any sporty, reliable suggestions? Okay, $8,000. You want a sporty car? I'd say look at Scions. You can get a decent used one if you price around. Or if you don't mind a Mazda Miata, I know they call them girl cars and stuff, but the Mazda Miatas are actually pretty reliable little sports cars, and they're fun to drive around. They're rag tops, and they can last a really long time. You might just look, there's millions of them out there, and you can get them dirt cheap here in Houston. You can get used ones for 3-4 grand easy. They're in pretty good shape, so you might even think about a Mazda Miata. Next question. Marcus Cortez says, Scotty, I'm going to look at an '03 Jeep Grand Cherokee tomorrow. It has 148,000 miles. This is a good car and what usually goes bad on it. Okay, not the greatest of cars. With 148,000 miles, could be having a lot of problems in the future. But if it's cheap enough, with that kind of mileage being 16 years old, it's not going to go for much in the real world. Have a mechanic, or if you have a scan tool, bring a scan tool with you. Check it and drive it around. The main thing you're going to check are the electronics, that the computer does all the checks, and the automatic transmission, which you can also check, because those have weak automatic transmission. If it's going out, you wouldn't even want to touch it. But if you can get it cheap enough, I've had customers buy those things cheaply enough and drive them for a few years and have fun with them. You never know. Just don't pay too much money for one of those old vehicles with that kind of mileage on it. Next question. Motive Beat says, Scotty, my 2000 Accord makes a grinding noise, but only when reversing. Could it be brakes or rotors? Well, of course, the simple thing is just take off your rear tires and look and see if the brake pads are touching the metal, and you'd see little rub marks, and you know that what it was. You want to pray it's that and not the transmission, because those Hondas are notorious for burning out the transmissions. And the first gear that normally goes out is reverse. If the transmission is going out, my advice is get rid of it as soon as you can. Because to rebuild a transmission on one of those Accords is going to cost anywhere from 35 to 5 grand, and 3,500 to 5 grand to actually do it correctly. They're very complex transmissions. They're more motorcycle design. You can't drop the pan. You got to split the cases. It's a real involved job. Next question. Tucker Hofer says, Scotty, what do you think about a 61 Studebaker Lark? Oh, those are cool cars. I had a customer that bought one of those like 30 years ago. I had fun working on driving a simple old car. It was a standard transmission, 3-speed, and it was fun to drive around. It was that weird lime green. It was kind of an odd looking car, but especially if they had that slant 6 engine. That slant 6 engine could run forever. I mean, I've seen them with 1 million miles on those things, so if you can get, people might think it's a collector's item, it's worth a whole bunch of money, but they're not really high-end collector's cars, so you don't pay a small fortune for one of those things. A lot of guys like them because they can get them cheap and fix them up and have a unique-looking car for not all that much money. Next question. Victor Velasquez says, Scotty, my mom has an '09 Nissan Altima. I noticed the tires in the rear are wearing out faster than the front. You know why? Yeah, she needs the rear end aligned. Used to be you only had front end alignments done, but all cars now have independent suspension. So the rear ones also need to be aligned, and perhaps the struts in the back are worn too, because when they wear and they bounce around too much, they'll wear in the back and not the front. And go to any front end lot shop, the honest ones, I'll give free estimates. They can look and say, yes, your alignment's off, and they'll say, yes, your struts are worn, or no, your struts are okay. You might have to do both, struts and alignment, but you do have a problem back there. And if it's both of them, a lot of times it's the struts are both worn out, and then you realign it when the work's done. Next question. Yasmara Villafana says, what are your thoughts about GMC and Chevy trucks? Okay, they used to be great trucks in the 60s. They were vying with Fords for the best trucks in the world. But their quality's gone down over time. I got customers that have 20-year-old ones, and they're still running like clocks. But I have customers that have ones that are 10 years and newer that have had a lot of problems. So I'm not a fan of their later stuff. They've lost a lot of quality controls at GM as far as I'm concerned. Look at that debacle they had with those ignition switches breaking, and they tried to hide it by changing the part number and not telling anybody. I mean, they're not that honest of a company anymore. I just don't trust them. I personally wouldn't buy one. But if you wanted a cool old truck, the old ones are excellent. They were well made. Next question. Vincent Militello says, Scotty, the AC compressor fell off my Honda Civic '02. Should I replace the clutch or the entire compressor? Okay, you got to replace the entire compressor. Years ago, I used to attempt to replace the AC clutches to save my customers money, and it always would bite me in the ass. Because what happens is, if the clutch breaks, they usually break because the compressor itself is going out. So you might as well replace the whole thing. You don't have to go to Honda and buy it. You can get an aftermarket brand new one at a good enough price. Well, that's it for this week. Now, remember, all these videos are turned into 3-minute highlight videos every day of the week in the afternoon about 4:30 Central Standard Time. And every day I got 2 videos running up, so join the Scotty Kilmer channel and you'll never miss another one. And I'll be here Saturday at 10 a.m. doing another live car talk.